welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. I'm Renee and I read a lot. And today I thought we would do something just a little bit different, where I would do my makeup and talk to you guys about one of the books that I most recently read and my thoughts on it, and comparing it to the TV show that is based on said book. This is going to be difficult for everyone to comprehend. It's difficult for me to comprehend. The world doesn't revolve around me, so I'm sure that I'm not the first person to ever have this idea or do this, but it's new to me, so that's why I'm calling it a new thing, because it's new in my heart. Yeah, I'm gonna start getting ready while I talk, and I'll explain why in a bit, but I'm not gonna mention all the products that I'm using, but I will have them all put in the description below the video, so if you're curious as to what any product was, you could go look at it. Because yeah, let me start getting ready and then I'll explain why I'm doing all this way. And I forgot again, god damn it, I forgot to bring down a mirror, so I'm gonna be using the mirror that's inside this hourglass palette that has butterflies on the front, which is key, is critical. There's a butterfly theme to this makeup. You'll see. Hello, Editing Renee here. I am editing this video and I was like, wow, I didn't do a great job of explaining this in the intro at all, probably because I had no idea what it was going to turn into. It's a little bit rambly, a little bit review, and a little bit comparison, but what it definitely is spoilers. So if for whatever reason you live under a rock and you haven't seen Bridgerton and you haven't read The Duke and I, and you want to, and you don't like spoilers, this is not the video for you. And if you want any sort of coherent thoughts or non-rambly explanations, this is also not the video for you. Because of who I am as a person. It is my fault. Anyway, I'll let you get back to the video. I just thought I'd pop in now to kind of adjust your expectations. Also, because I'm discussing a show and a book that discuss these topics, I'm discussing them, but totally get if it's triggering or you don't want to listen to it. Sex and SA, so just stay vigilant out there, folks. Don't watch this if you don't want to hear about those things. Totally get that. I'll catch y'all when I catch y'all. Peace. Hello. She was laying in a plant today. I tried filming this yesterday and it was kind of a disaster, and I knew while it was happening and it was a disaster, but I still thought I would like soldier on. And then I was trying to go edit through the footage today and I was like, wow, this was not salvageable. It's just literally not salvageable. And I couldn't save it because it was not salvageable. Say salvageable one more time. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to do that again, obviously, because it wasn't redeemable. And I think part of the problem is that I kept pausing to like discuss like whatever makeup product I was using or whatever, and that took away a lot from what was happening elsewhere. So it was very jumbled and my brain just doesn't work like with the walking and chewing gum, talking, putting on makeup. Apparently those are two skills that I need to, if I want to do this for a video, I need to get better at doing it at the same time. Regardless, that's why we're doing it here again today. And I thought the book that I thought I'd talk about is one that obviously isn't like new. It was published in 2006, and the TV show that accompanies it that I wanted to like do a comparison of it with is also not new. It came out in 2020. I'm sure I put this in the title of the video. The book that I'm talking about is The Duke and I by Julia Quinn, which I did bring down here as a reference. And the corresponding TV show being Bridgerton, series 1, not season. I keep calling the seasons series, and I don't know why. I don't know if I couldn't tell you why that is. It's not new, it's old news, and I get that, but it's new to me because I just read it. And, you know, in my opinion, I'm going to be the change I want to see in the world, and I'm not going to talk about things just because they're trendy. I'm going to talk about things because I want to talk about things. And nobody else I know has read the book, so I have to just talk to myself alone on my floor in my living room if I want to discuss it. So I'm doing that. I'm sitting and I'm going to talk to you guys about it. Because I have a lot of thoughts. So I'm going to put TV show adaptations of books on a scale of like the Shadow and Bone series and the TV show that they came out with out of that to like Game of Thrones. And I mean seasons 1 through 5. I don't mean what happens after they get away from the book source material. Because I think that Game of Thrones did a really, really good job of taking a really complicated, confusing book, very good book, adapting it to TV without straying super far from what the book was. And Shadow and Bone, I think, was not my taste of a TV adaptation. I didn't like what they did with that. So that's kind of the scale that we're working on here. Normally, I feel like I read a book before I see the show or the movie or whatever it is. But in this case, I watched the TV series first. And I like 90% like the TV series. There's obviously stuff that I didn't love about it, but nothing is perfect, you know? But in this case, I didn't even know that it was based on a book until I went to Target after the show had come out and I'd seen the book and I was like, oh, I'm gonna read that at some point. So I've had these books for a while. I've had them sitting on my bookshelf because whenever I lived back in the United States, I used to subscribe to this book subscription box, Once Upon a Book Club. That would send you, you know, like a book every month, and then on certain pages you could open up little gifts and they would have something to do with the book. It was a great subscription box and I highly recommend it. It's just shipping things here is like a bitch. So I stopped getting it because it costs way too much to ship things here and you have to pay customs and it's a whole mess. But they came out with like these limited edition special Once Upon a Book Club editions of the Bridgerton series that I thought were just so cute. So I bought them and they're sitting on my shelf, and it just struck me recently to read at least the first two. I'm saving the third for whenever the third season of Bridgerton comes out, and then I think I'll read like the rest. But because we're so close, the third season should be coming out at the end of the year. Whatever, it doesn't matter. What matters is it got me thinking a lot, right? To be honest, this is one of the rare times where I'll say I think I liked the TV show better, which does make me question myself if I like the books better normally because they're better or because I read them first. And I just think in my head, that's the way the story's supposed to be. So whenever any changes are made, I don't like any changes, but not because the changes are bad, but because my brain is stuck on one thing. Because in this case, I thought that most of the changes that the show made were good changes. And I think I liked the story better because I'll start with, you know, a general overview of the story. The basic story is the same, right? A duke with daddy issues comes back from abroad and strikes up a fake dating deal with Daphne, one of the Bridgerton siblings, the fourth one, the eldest daughter, who's out in society and looking for a husband. And they fake date, and everybody knows this isn't our first time on the fake dating rodeo, okay? I don't know. It would be really interesting to see a fake dating plot where they didn't fall in love in the end, but spoiler alert, they fall in love kind of in like halfway through, because that doesn't solve their problems, like admitting that they have feelings for each other. But that's kind of where the similarities stop. Like the basic plot is the same, but they really changed a lot of how we go about it, right? So in the books, it's never explicitly stated, and I can't imagine, I don't think that there's any racial conflict the way that there is in the TV show, because that's a huge part of the TV show. So Simon, the duke who comes back from overseas, one who's involved in this fake dating thing, his whole backstory on why he doesn't want to fall in love is because when he was a kid, he didn't talk. And when he did eventually talk, when he was a little older than most kids maybe, he had a stutter. And his dad was super cold to him, kind of disowned him after, you know, he started talking with a stutter, because the duke really wants his son, his only heir, to be perfect and to represent the Bassett, is their last name, the Bassett family, as a duke should, I suppose. I don't know. I've never been a duke, so I don't really know too much about his feelings on that matter. Regardless, it hurts poor little boy Simon, and he's like, you know what? I know that you want this family to continue, and like that's all you care about. So to get back at you for not being the perfect dad, or like really a dad, I'm not going to continue this family line. I'm not going to get married. Part of the reason in the show why the dad really wants to continue this line is because they were given this great opportunity, because they're Black, to become dukes. But I like that tension that it adds. I thought that that was great. And I thought that, but you know, I'm always a fan of adding more diversity into shows and movies and casts and everything. And I thought that the way that they did it, and the way that they did it where it added to the plot, was very well done and very interesting. And I liked it a lot. So I was glad for that change. And it gave them more of an excuse to flesh out, I think, Queen Charlotte's backstory. And so she's the queen that's kind of overseeing this whole thing, overseeing society and whatnot in the show. She's not in the books at all, which is crazy. She might be in books past book 2 because I haven't read past book 2, but in books 1 and 2, she's not in there, which is crazy because she literally got her own spin-off because of how interesting she is, right? How interested people are in her. Which I think is great because I was also interested in her, and the spin-off was cute. It was fine. It was cute. It wasn't my favorite. Again, it wasn't anywhere in the books, which is just wild to me that they pulled this whole character out of nowhere. But yeah, I mean, there's some like minor differences at first. Like, it's Daphne's first season out, and she's like the diamond of the season in the show. And the only reason she's not getting matches is because the Featheringtons, who are in the book but are not nearly as fleshed out, which I'll get to in a second, they have a cousin come stay with them from the country, Marina, who everybody like wildly falls in love with, right? She's the unexpected beauty match of the season. So people are ignoring Daphne over it. Whereas in the book, she's being friend-zoned by everyone. Everyone thinks she's really nice. Even though it doesn't really make much sense because she's gotten like 4 proposals. And she's like, no, everyone just thinks I'm a friend though. And it's like, really? Because you've been proposed to 4 times. Which is something that I didn't really love about book Daphne, is that she's a lot more like insecure. So, you know, they changed that. I think that also added like a good amount to the conflict, like having a whole other character. And Marina gets a really fleshed out backstory with like a pregnancy and an engagement to one of the other Bridgerton siblings, which is just wild because obviously none of that's in the books. And the Featheringtons get much more fleshed out. Like, we learn about Lord Featherington's gambling debts and, you know, the cousin who's coming to stay with them, and the dowries for the girls, because there's 3 girls in the family, them having no dowries and whatever. They take on a whole life, which is just wild because in the books they're side characters though, and they don't really add anything. And I really like the Featheringtons, and I like how much they add to the plot. So I thought that was like a big bonus, right? I thought that was a good change that they made, was introducing all of that conflict, because that just helps add to the depth of the TV show, right? I feel like a book, maybe when being turned into a TV show, you do need to flesh out a lot more of the side characters so that there's more tension and conflict and drama. I don't know. Not to sound too crazy, but so I'll move back into what's happening in the plot, right? So Daphne's out. She and Simon meet at a ball where she's punching Lord Berwick in the face, in both of them. However, in the show, Anthony, her eldest brother, who's the Lord Bridgerton because their dad is dead, he is pushing Daphne and Lord Berwick together. In the books, Anthony has his sister's back, and I was like, yeah, don't marry him. And he's a lot more evil in the show. In the books, he's just dumb, but he's kind of hearted. In the show, he's like got an illegitimate kid he doesn't take care of, and he just is fleshed out more evilly, you know what I mean? Like, you really don't like him in the show, as opposed to being just kind of annoyed with him in the books. And they meet, and they, you know, hack this fake dating plot because Simon's a duke. He knows that all the ambitious mamas are going to be after him, trying to get their daughters married off. Like, come on, single duke, let's go. And he's like, don't worry, men are going to love you once I put interest in you, because men always want what they can't have or something. I don't know. It's a very thin premise of fake dating, but whatever gets you guys together at the end. You know, I'm not here to judge how valid a fake dating plot is, because I don't think they're ever really valid, but to each their own. And it works. People lay off the Duke, Simon, and men start going after Daphne again. But for whatever reason, the queen is like, I'm still bored. And so she gets her like nephew, a Russian prince, to come start courting Daphne too, which is just like a really interesting decision on her part, like looking back, because I don't know why she had to go through like her nephew, the Russian prince, if she has like 12 unmarried children of her own. Like, maybe worry about getting them married. Like, it's just such an interesting, like, I'm not gonna introduce Daphne to one of my prince children, or, you know, try and spice up my life by getting one of them married. I'm gonna introduce her to my Russian nephew prince, whatever. Anyway, I didn't really like the whole prince thing. I thought that felt really strange even the first time I watched the show, and I'm glad after reading the book and seeing that wasn't in there that whatever. Anyway, so Daphne's all conflicted because she's like, oh, I love the Duke, but this prince is after me. Do I just marry the prince? Whatever. In the book, she's a lot less conflicted. She's kind of just like, oh my God, I think I'm actually falling in love with this Duke. But the Duke's like, I cannot marry anybody because he doesn't want to start a family. Simon doesn't want a family. And apparently if you get married, that means you automatically have to have children. I mean, I guess it's like the 1800s. It's early 1800s. It's Regency era England. So maybe, but I mean, he proves to us that he is capable of, he does understand enough about sexual education that he knows he can be married without having kids. So in my opinion, he probably should have just been looking for somebody who didn't want to have kids in the first place, but that's neither here nor there. Would have solved a lot of their issues though. A bunch of other stuff is happening, but eventually Daphne and the Duke get caught kissing in a garden in both the book and the show. And Anthony, the eldest brother, is like, I'm challenging you to a duel, Simon. You've taken my sister's honor. And he never approved of this going on anyway, because he and Simon were friends in school, and he thinks Simon is a rake, which is a word that is completely overused in the books. It's like every third word is rake. And it just basically means man whore. And I swear on my life, I get maybe it doesn't have the same connotation, but if somebody kept telling me, oh, I can't date you, I don't want my brother to date you, whatever, because you're a whore. Oh, you're a whore. At some point, I'd just be like, okay, I don't want to date you either. Like, that's super not nice of you. But it doesn't seem to affect them that much, to be dead honest with you. So again, I won't interfere in their business. Then Anthony challenges Simon to the duel, right? And Simon is like, okay, yeah, I'd rather die than marry you, Daphne. Which, not the most romantic sentiment I've ever heard in my life. I'd argue it's one of the least romantic things I've ever heard. If my husband was like, I would rather die than marry you, perish. Again, to each their own. Daphne goes out, saves him. He's like, I can't have children. And he's like, just know that if you marry me, you're not gonna have children. And she's like, okay, better than you being dead though. And the show kind of fleshes that out a bit more. In the books, they get married, no problem. In the show, they have to like admit to how they feel for each other. In the books, they're like a lot less hesitant to admit that they have feelings for each other. In the show, that's like kind of the big tension, is that they won't admit it. But in the book, they know it. They just think it's a bad idea to get married because he's a rake and he doesn't want to get married. This is the butterflies. This is the palette. This is where the butterflies comes back. If you've been paying attention, wondering about the butterflies, that's it. That's the whole theme of the butterflies. I'm done after that. My blush is still open. That would have been a disaster if me or the cats had stepped on it. Anyway, I've been like going over this plot to just like kind of emphasize the differences, because they eventually get married. They, are like, oh my God, we're in love. And they're like rabbits. Until Daphne learns about sex ed from a maid and is like, oh wait, Simon pulls out whenever we're not having sex. Maybe that's the problem this whole time. And this is where I wish that the show had made another change, because she does like essay her husband. He gets drunk and is half asleep, and she forces him to finish inside of her even though he tries to get away, in both the show and the book. And if we were already making all these changes, like we were making changes to Daphne's character, we brought in the whole Marina situation, the Featheringtons, the Queen, whatever, you would think that we could change like the most controversial part of this whole book, where she essays her husband, and that's what causes them to like separate, because she's like, oh, it's not that you can't have kids, it's that you won't. And he's like, okay, well, I don't like that you took that from me without my permission, which is a super valid stance to have, by the way. Like, you should not be forcing, if your husband's told you, I don't want to have kids, that is not the way to go about forcing him into having kids. I can't believe I have to even utter those words. And this book wasn't written in the 1800s. This book was written in 2006. So we did know that in 2006. And we knew that in 2020 when the show came out too. So I have no idea why they didn't make that change. And that's my big gripe. That's a big reason why I gave the book 3 stars, which I did, is because that scene was just really unnecessary. And then Simon leaves after that, book and show. In the show, Colin, the third Bridgerton sibling, he's gotten engaged to Marina, the girl from earlier, and he and her are like gonna run away to Scotland, so it's this big scandal. So the Duke comes back to London to try and save the family from scandal. But in the book, he just realizes that he loves her, and so he goes back to her. And she's like, oh, are you living for me, or are you living for your father? And he's like, you're right, I've been living for my father despite him, but maybe having kids isn't so bad. So it does like work, her like plan to essay him and force him into having kids with her. It does work. He does eventually come back and says, I want to have kids with you. It's just like the least healthy way to go about it. You know what I mean? Like, talk. Open your mouths and communicate. You're a married couple. You can do that. I'm pretty sure you have words in the 1800s, so use them. Yeah, and then they eventually, they have a kid. In the books, it's a girl. In the show, it's a boy. That doesn't really matter. Nobody really cares. And it finishes. Both of them finish. The book and the show both wrap up. All counts are wrapped up. They also make a lot of changes to Anthony's whole character, which I don't like. I don't like anything that they did with Anthony. You know, like earlier I was saying, oh, in the books, he protects his sister from Lord Burbrook. In the show, he is trying to force his sister to be with Lord Burbrook. I don't like that. I liked it when he was like the older brother who's like, yeah, I'll help you out with whatever you need. I'll keep him away, whatever. We're the super tight, close-knit family. No problem. I'll listen to you. You make your own decisions about the man you love, whatever. In the show, he's very like, I don't know, more controlling, I guess. And they also changed a lot to do with his love story, which I don't love. He has a mistress. In the show, she's Sienna. In the book, she's Maria. In the book, she has one scene only in the second book. She doesn't appear in the first book at all. Whatever. I'll get into that when I talk about the second season versus the second book and what I liked and what I didn't. Because I didn't like anything. I really didn't like the second season of the show. And obviously, like, the show itself is a cheesy romance. And I like cheesy romances. The book is even cheesier, if that's possible. Witty. Like, Daphne is a lot more witty in the books. I think I like how she's wittier in the books, but I don't like how she's been friend-zoned in the books, so that makes sense. So I like her half better in the books and half better in the show. But overall, I think there's enough difference in the show and in the book to justify watching or reading the both. Like, I think if you've watched the show, you could read the book and there would be enough. And I think if you've read the book, you can watch the show and you would be happy with the changes, which I do think is good in an adaptation. And I think that's kind of rare, to be honest, where normally I think you like one or the other. But I think they did well adapting it to like a wide audience. I mean, obviously they did because it's become so popular. So I can't talk and do mascara at the same time. Anybody who can is a witch and needs to be burned at the stake. So you'll just have to watch me do this. Okay, I'm sure that was riveting. Good, I'm almost done with my makeup right as I get to the end of my discussion. I hope this has been coherent. It probably hasn't been, which is fine. I'm still practicing. I'm still getting used to this. I'll be better next time, I swear. I mainly just wanted to say that the book and the show have a lot of differences, and I think that the differences were executed really well. And I liked the differences, and I'm glad for them. I just wish they would have changed to the one part with essay if they were already going to stray so far from the source material, but you know, beggars can't be choosers, and nobody asked for my opinion on that, which is so strange because you would think that they would have, but I'm giving it anyway. Unsolicited opinions, that's what the internet is for. Am I wrong? No, yeah, I'm just trying to dry the setting spray, but I'm never actually dry in this country because it's like 100 fucking degrees every day and this house doesn't have centralized AC, so I'm always just like a little sweaty, which is why liquid makeup is so great because I can pretend it's the makeup and not the sweat. It's both in actuality. And I'm positive people can see that. I'm just fooling myself. It just gives me the confidence I need to leave the house. I like looking like I just got out of the shower, but miraculously the rest of my makeup stayed on. Anyway, in conclusion, I really liked the show adaptation and I think they did a great job with it. And I liked most of the changes that they made. But I'm still glad that I read the book too. On the scale of like Shadow and Bone to Game of Thrones, it's obviously not a Game of Thrones level adaptation. Nothing ever will be. I've got to get that through my head. I just, you know, if I could go back to an alternate timeline where seasons 6 through 8 were differently produced, I would love to be in that alternate timeline. If I was a character in a book at that moment, I would have just sighed wistfully. That's the energy I was trying to emulate. But on that scale, I think it's, you know, maybe 60%, 70%. I'm going to say it's 75% towards the Game of Thrones spectrum. If Shadow and Bone is 0 and Game of Thrones is 100, it's like it's 75. It was like, they could have done more changes, but the changes that they made I thought were good, with the exception of Anthony. We don't talk about Anthony. He's my household's Bruno. So I hope you liked it. I'm gonna try and get better at talking while I do my makeup because I do like this format for doing videos. But anyway, as always, let me know what you're reading. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. Please like the video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to see more. And I'll catch y'all in the next one. Bye.